As everyone is aware, we're starting our meeting today. Bob will be speaking for us for 3 services today, and then every night this week at 7 o'clock. We're going to begin with a prayer, and then it's all Bob's. And Bob Harding, would you lead us in that prayer?
Yes. I hope you know without my saying that I am pleased to be back. I am honored that I've had the invitation to come and to be with you guys, and I feel like I'm at home and a part of the group, and I appreciate you for that. And I look forward to our time together. And if there are some special things that you would like for us to try to deal with or to try to include in the series during the week, let me know. I'm not promising that I can cover every topic that comes along, but I'll see, and then if I can't, I'll tell you, oops, can't do that one, so we'll do something else. But it is good to be here and to be with you. All of you know that my friend Alan is here. Every time I come to California, Alan shows up and we're joined at the hip for the whole time that we're here. But there's a reason for that. I've got a story about a situation that kind of explains Alan's coming. There was a young preacher that moved into this little rural area to become the new pastor in this local church. And the people in the church immediately told him about an old heathen that lived out on the side, on the edge of town, that wouldn't go to any church. He didn't go anywhere, and he was the enemy of all the preachers. And they told him that, now he'll show up one time. He'll come because you're new in town, but don't expect him back. Well, sure enough, the old heathen showed up. The next week, he was back again. Next week, he was back again. Next week, he was back again. And the young preacher, he was busting his buttons, and all of that. He went out to visit the guy and said, they tell me that you never would go hear other preachers, and you come all the time to hear me. He kept waiting for the guy to compliment him, and he wouldn't do it. He never did. Just didn't say anything about the preaching. Finally, he just asked him that, why is it that you come to hear me? He said, well, young feller, it's like this. He said, the fact of the matter is, I can't stand preaching. But what you do comes as close to being no preaching as anything I've ever been around. So Alan likes to hang around with me because of that kind of situation. When I was here last year, we did a series from the book of Psalms. And just last Wednesday night, I closed a 2-month study at home. They catch me during the holiday period and have me teach a class during December, January, February, too. Because I'm there most of the time then. And I had just closed a series on the wisdom literature. It'd be good to spend some time on that. Marvelous material. And of course, there's not time to even touch the hem of the garment on all of that material, but I want to do something this morning in the few minutes that we have. Open your Bibles to the book of Ecclesiastes. And I'd like to just take a quick look at the thrust of this. This book has been abused by many, many people. Many people think that it's a pessimistic book looking at life, that it says everything is terrible. Remember, repeatedly in the book it says, vanity of vanity, all is vanity. And there are several places in the book that just sound so depressing The day of death is better than the day of birth. It'd be better for a man that he was never even born than to have to go through the things here. And people seize on those particular points and look at it and conclude that the book is totally pessimistic. It's just a downer. And a lot of people say, I don't even want to read it. Fact of the matter is, the book is a realistic look of life and tries to tell us to make the best of the world in spite of the fact the world is not ideal. You know why the world's not ideal? Garden of Eden, sin. And from that time on, problems have beset mankind, ultimately leading to his death. When people get mad at God because of a malady that happens now, a child is born with a malady or a terrible accident, why did God let this happen? I said, you're getting mad at the wrong person. Get mad at the devil. He's the source of all the problems, not God. Now, with all of that as background, book of Ecclesiastes no doubt uses Solomon's life as a model and builds off of Solomon's life. Solomon may have written it, or God may have had somebody else write it as though Solomon were saying it, and using Solomon's experiences, or many of them, pardon me, as a case history, as an example to build on. I personally believe that to be the case. You know, you can go through all the arguments that there's no evidence of Solomon's repentance, and some things are mentioned in the book that seem not to have happened during Solomon's time, that would have been later events and things like that. That's incidental. The message of the book is the same, and God could have had Solomon write it at any stage of his life, and I know that and accept that fully. Or if someone else wrote it with Solomon's life as the pattern, it's still God's teaching to us about it. What does the book do? The book starts out in chapter 1 with verses 2 through 11. And we don't have time to even read all of this. But it starts out, vanity of vanities, all is vanity, saith the preacher. What profit hath a man of all of his labor wherein he laboreth under the sun? Now that's the question. What's the profit in life? What's the profit of being here? And then he gives a whole series. One generation goes and another generation comes, and there's not even any memory of them after. Some of the Adventists and some of the others that teach that there's an annihilation at death, seize on things like that and say, see, there's nothing after death. What he's talking about is, when you leave this life, you're out of this life. There's nothing here for you. You're not involved in anything that is done under the sun. And that expression occurs repeatedly in the book. Then he talks about the sun comes up, the sun goes down. The waters, the rivers run into the sea, and yet the sea is not filled. Where the waters go, they go to the clouds, they come back in rain. It's a cycle that goes on and on. The eye is never filled with seeing, nor the ear with hearing. I had dinner last night with Cassie and Larry. It was quite full. And how many times have you finished a big meal and said, I don't think I'll ever want anything to eat again? How many times have you said that? And then you get up the next morning starving to death. And the point that the writer is making is the cycles go on and on and on. And he raised the question, what is life all about? Drop down to verse 12. I, the preacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem, and I applied my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all that's done under heaven. It is a sore travail that God hath given to the sons of men to be exercised. Here was his theme. I'm going to try to find out what is good for man here in life under the sun. Verse 14, I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and striving after the wind. I think verse 15 is a good key too. That which is crooked cannot be made straight. That which is wanting cannot be numbered. You're not going to change the world. How many times have you heard somebody say, wow, I wish we could elect a bunch of Christians to Congress and so they could straighten things out and everything could be one. My first reaction is, what have you got against all those Christians that you'd send them to Congress? I served 18 years on city council in a little community. You can pass laws that kind of tweak things, that the liquor store has to be so far from the school building and things like that. But you're not going to change the world. Look at prohibition in our country and that kind of thing. You're not going to change the world. Adjust to it. So the writer says, I communed with my own heart saying, I've gotten me great wisdom. Maybe that would be the answer. I had wisdom above all that were before me in Jerusalem and had great experience in wisdom and knowledge. I applied my heart to know wisdom and to know folly. And I perceived that this also was striving after a wind. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. You know, when I was a kid growing up, if some terrible thing happened in China, didn't bother us. We never heard about it. Today, it's on your news as quickly as it's on the news in Beijing. And we have all that. Now, is it good that we've got all of this technological advancement? Oh, it's got wonderful blessings, and it brings a curse with it. It's a two-sided coin. Wisdom is wonderful. Knowledge is wonderful. But there is a truth in ignorance is bliss. There is a truism in that. And the writer is saying, I was trying to find out what is the answer to life here. And so I thought maybe wisdom is the answer. No, wisdom didn't do it. Chapter 2. He says, I said to my heart, come on, I'll prove you with mirth. Therefore enjoy pleasure. And behold, this also is vanity. And then he says, what about laughter? It was mad, and the mirth, what doeth it? I search my heart to know my flesh, to cheer my flesh with wine, my heart yet guiding me with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the sons of men that they should do under heaven all the days of their life. And then he enumerates things that he did. Material accomplishments. I built great houses, planted vineyards, had gardens, trees, and all that. I had servants, and I had servants born in my house. What's the significance of that? I had servants, and I didn't have just new riches. I had servants who had children who grew up to be my... I had long time wealth. I had everything. He says later, I had everything that my heart desired. How many times have you said to yourself, oh, if I just had enough money that I could just go anywhere I wanted to or have anything that I wanted, if I could just... You know, we look at a Bill Gates or somebody like that and think, oh my. And the writer said, I tried all of that. And guess what? It was also empty. I'd be foolish if I stood here and said that material things can't bring any pleasure. Sure they can. But it's not ultimately gratifying. It's like that meal that you ate last night. It was wonderful. But it doesn't ultimately gratify. And neither does mirth and pleasure. He had men singers and women singers. He had all the entertainment that you could have. He had all of the joys and the thrills that this world could afford. But there was still an emptiness. It just doesn't gratify. Then later in chapter 2, he says, I thought maybe by my accomplishments I would succeed beyond anything and find joy. So I labored hard and I had great success. I had great production. And then I found out you die and you leave that to somebody else, and you have no idea what they will do with it. You can't really control it. When you're out of it, it's over and done. And there is no way that you can totally control what's going to happen after you. What's the writer saying? The writer is saying this. You can't find ultimate satisfaction and joy in this world. Because everything that has pleasure attached to it also has a downside. And your problems come. Now, is that saying, don't enjoy any of this? Is it saying, oh, just sit around, wring your hands and say everything is terrible? No. About 4 or 5 times in the book, the writer is going to stop and look in chapter 2 at verse 24. There is nothing better for a man than that he should eat and drink and make his soul enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw, that it is from the hand of God. Other places he said, it is a gift of God to enjoy the things of this world. Who can eat or who can have enjoyment more than I? For to the man that pleaseth him, God giveth wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to him that is a sinner, to him that is evil, he giveth travail, and to gather and heap up that which is going to perish after all. This also is vanity. The book is not pessimistic. It says, look, you're not going to ultimately find happiness through wisdom and knowledge. Your toys can never ultimately gratify and satisfy you. Your accomplishments in this world materially can never ultimately gratify and satisfy. And even if all of these things are wonderful and you enjoy them all, guess what happens? If they don't rust out, you do. And you die. What then? So he's wringing his hands and saying, what's this world? And the point is this. Yes, the world has pleasure. The world has value. But this world is never ultimately satisfying. You don't find ultimate gratification in this world. Again, the eye is never filled with seeing, nor the ear with hearing. It's always a matter that I get hungry again. Now, this world is a wonderful place to live. This world has marvelous opportunities for us. This world offers many pleasures for us. But this world is a sorry substitute as heaven. It's not heaven. And it doesn't ultimately give you the picture that you get of God's description of heaven. No sorrow, no tears, everything wonderful and never ending. That's not what the world is. So what do you do about it? Face reality and accept things as they are and where you fit in the picture. Chapter 3. Beautiful statement. For everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. This is not Calvinistic predestination. When it says there's a time to be born and a time to die, it's not saying God has got the date set out there for you and when that date comes you go. I had a good friend in my hometown in Temple Terrace who was a Calvinist. Good fellow. Went to Presbyterian church and he believed the old Presbyterianism. And he and I argued about that all the time. And I kept asking him, if you really believe that nothing is going to happen till it's your time to go, and if you really believe that when it's your time to go, boom, you're gone, and there's nothing you can do about it. If you really believe that, why do you look both ways when you cross the street? Why bother about it? No control. Nothing. This is not picturing that kind of time. And I'll not read all of it. But there's a time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant, a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down, a time to build up. A time to weep, a time to mourn. A time to laugh, a time to mourn. A time to dance. The world has beginnings and endings repeatedly. The crops, the laughter, the sorrows. Time to be born, a time to die. And the reality is that there's nothing we can do about that. Those things are going to happen in this life. And the writer says, likewise, life has many inequities. Many things that really bespeak unfairness to us as human beings. Drop down in chapter 3. Oh, by the way, who is his name? One of mine. He wrote a song that I always think of when I read that section in chapter 3 of A Time for Everything. He wrote a song that said, everything is beautiful in its own way. Who wrote that?
Ray Stevens.
Who?
Ray Stevens.
Ray Stevens. And the thing that blows my mind about that is he's the same guy that wrote the Mississippi Squirrel and
Church Revival.
and the Shriners Convention and all those wild, off-the-wall songs and everything. And he wrote a beautiful song. Everything is beautiful in its own way. And that's right. And the Lord is saying, life is filled with beginnings and endings, and you can't change that. It's reality. Now drop down to verse 16. Moreover, I saw under the sun, in the place of justice, that wickedness was there. And in the place of righteousness, that wickedness was there. Place of justice. Perhaps an allusion to the courts. And he says, you ought to get fairness there. Everything's supposed to be equal and handled properly. But sometimes there's corruption. Now that's not saying all judges are corrupt, but some are. And I went to the place of righteousness, maybe talking about the priesthood, the preachers, the religious leaders, people who ought to be the icons of morality and good things and doing the right kinds of things. But you know as well as I do, there's such a thing as corrupt preachers. I hope all of them aren't corrupt, by the way. Including the one talking to you. But some are. And it does happen. Why? We're in the world. And people are not always what they ought to be. I said in my heart, God will judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time for every purpose and every work. And I said in my heart, it is because of the sons of men that God may prove them, and that they may see that they themselves are but as beasts. For that which befalleth the sons of men befalleth beasts, even one thing befalleth them all. What is it that befalls beast and man alike? Death. He goes on to say, who knows whether the spirit of the beast, where it goes, and where the spirit of the man goes. Some of the religious groups seize on that and say, there again, there's nothing after death. Annihilation. That's not what it's talking about. It's talking about physical life. You have a, quote, breath of life. It's not a tangible. It's not something you can take and put in a test tube or put it on a test case of some kind. Animals have exactly the same thing. And when the animal dies, the body's there, it's gone. When a man dies, the body's there, death has come. That life quality has departed. Now we know that man also has an eternal spirit. He really has three parts. He has a body, he has a life quality that we call the breath of life, and he has an eternal spirit. The animal has those first two, and as far as that goes, man is not superior to the animals in those ways. There are a lot of animals that are stronger than we are. There are a lot of animals that live longer than we do. There are a lot of animals that do things that we can't do. And as far as physical life, man and beast are alike. But he said there are inequities. Look at chapter 4. You're talking about depression. I returned and saw all the oppressions that were done under the sun. And behold, the tears of those who were oppressed. And they had no comforter. And on the side of their oppressors there was power. But they had no comfort. Politically, I abhor the things that, to me, I'm giving a personal judgment now. Don't assign this to anybody else. I abhor what has been done politically to use poor, downtrodden people as political ploys and to manipulate them by, we're going to give you a carrot, hanging the carrot in front of the little donkey type of thing. We're going to give you these things, we're going to give you these things, we're going to give you these things. And do that. I hate that. And I vote against it every time I get a chance. But I want to tell you too, my heart breaks for people who are in poverty and who are on the, please understand that, who live on the wrong side of the tracks and who have very little. I've had other jobs. I've had daytime jobs during my life as well as preaching. And I've been able to rub elbows with a lot of people that are in positions of authority and power. I've known state senators and representatives and judges and guys like that personally. And if I got in trouble or if one of my kids got in trouble, I had people I could go to. Take that homeless guy on the side of the street. When he gets in problems, who's he going to go to? Who's going to listen to him? Who's going to care? The writer is saying, there are some who are oppressed. This doesn't mean that all rich people oppress the poor. They don't. The poor, in many ways, are dependent on the generosity. I don't mean charity, but providing jobs and providing leadership and doing all those kinds of things. They're dependent on it. And thank God, there are people in positions of power who are good people and who do honorable things to benefit society. But the writer is looking at it and saying, the people who are oppressed, the people who are at the bottom of the power pole, they don't have the power to reach out to somebody and get help. It's unfortunate. Is everything bad? Things like this go on in the book. Turn over to chapter 9. First, let me mention again, there are about 4 or 5 places in the book where the writer makes almost the same statement. There's nothing better for a man to do than to eat and drink and enjoy the fruit of his labor. And he uses this expression, it is the gift of God. God wants you to enjoy this world. Look at chapter 9. Starting in verse 2. All things come alike to all. There's one event to the righteous and to the wicked, to the good and the clean and to the unclean, to him that sacrificeth, that's the religious guy, and to him that sacrificeth not. As is the good, so is the sinner. As he that sweareth, as he that feareth an oath. What is the one thing that happens to everybody? Death. This is an evil that under all that is done under the sun, that there is one event unto all. Yea, also the heart of the sons of men is full of evil, and madness is in their heart while they live, and after that they go to the dead. Now, does life have value? I love this analogy. For to him that is joined with the living, there is hope. For a living dog is better than a dead lion. I like that. Lion, king of beasts, and all that. But if the lion's dead, the little puppy dog bouncing around him that's still alive, he got the advantage. He's better off. The writer is saying life is not all terrible. Life has value. Enjoy life. But face the reality that are not always equitable. Drop down to verse 11. And this is a passage that is underlined in my heart. And in my judgment, it comes close to being the real picture of life as God is picturing. Verse 11. And it's easy to remember. 9:11. You've heard that number before. I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill, but time and chance happeneth to them all. Who wins the race? Usually the fastest runner. Not always. Sometimes he pulls a hamstring. Somebody else wins. Who usually wins the battle? The strongest army. Not always. Sometimes somebody is like Gideon and gets in on the side and does something and overcomes the power of the others. Who usually gets success in business? The wise man. Not always. Sometimes they find oil on the back 40 of the poorest guy in town, and the next thing you know, he's a rich man. I preach a lot out in West Texas, and I can take you to place after place where here is an old adobe shack that the family lived in for years, grew up in, the babies were born in it and all that, and sitting right next door to it is a beautiful ranch-type house, all modern, all fixed up and all of that thing, and you look out in the back, and there are a couple of pumps going out in the backyard where they found the oil. That old boy was a dry land farmer eking out a living, barely able to sustain himself. And then they discover oil on his farm. Time and chance happen to them. Now sometimes oil wells go dry. Sometimes the guy who had success gets wiped out with a storm or some other calamity or illness takes him. God has never promised that if you're His child, nothing bad can happen to you. The televangelists make millions with it. God will bless you, just send me your money. I mean, I listen to them sometimes, and it's open. It's blatant. And the whole image is what we've called it health and wealth religion. That if you're God's man, you're always going to be healthy and you'll get rich. God never promised that. God never promised a Christian that he couldn't be put to death. He warned Christians that it could happen to you. History says it did. Time and chance happen to us all. What's the book about? You get over to the end of the book, and the end of chapter 11, the writer says, "Rejoice, O young man, in thy youth, and let thy heart cheer thee in the days of thy youth." If I've got anything against young people, it's the fact that I ain't one of them. Enjoy youth. I've had a day job that put me in circles with young people for many years. And it's marvelous to see their vitality and their opportunities and their enthusiasm. Yeah, they're over expectant of the world and all of that. But youth is wonderful. Wonderful. And the writer is saying, enjoy it. Chapter 12. Because the time will come when you have no pleasure in these material things. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw nigh when you say, I have no pleasure in them. And then he describes things. And here is one place that I can be the model. Okay. He describes aging. Ouch. He said that the day when, verse 3, when the keepers of the house shall tremble, probably talking about the arms shaking, and the strong men shall bow themselves low, the legs begin to fail. The grinders cease, the teeth. Those that look out the windows shall be darkened, the eyes. The doors shall be shut in the street. That's probably talking about the lips, the mouth. When the sound of grinding is low, and one shall rise up at the voice of a bird, can't sleep well. And all the daughters of music shall be brought low. They'll be afraid of that which is high, scared to walking. The almond tree shall blossom gray hair. The grasshopper shall be a burden. And there's a question as to whether that means if you had even the weight of a little grasshopper, or whether it means you're walking like a grasshopper. Remember how awkward and everything. Because man goeth to his everlasting home. Aging, life ending, all this is doing. He goes on and describes it. The silver cord is loose, probably the spinal cord. The golden bowl is broken, the cranium. The pitcher is broken at the fountain and broken at the cistern, the heart doesn't pump anymore. And the dust returneth to the earth where it was, and the spirit returneth to God who gave it. So what do you do about it? End of the book, verse 11. The words of the wise are as goads, as nails well fastened that you can hang on, you can put things on. Furthermore, my son, be admonished, the making of many books, there is no end. You'll hear all that people talking. But verse 13. I came to the end of the matter. All has been heard. And his conclusion is, fear God, keep his commandments. That doesn't mean cowardice toward God. Fear God is used in all the wisdom literature. The Psalms, the Proverbs, and here, as respect for God. Keep God in the right place. Keep your heart right toward God. Fear God. Respect God. Keep his commandments. Your Bible probably says this is the whole duty of man. If you'll notice, the word duty is in italics, which means it was supplied by the translator. Literally what that verse says is, fear God, keep his commandments. This is the whole of man. That is the sum. That's the total. That's the total picture. Is to have the proper respect for God and to handle your life recognizing that God will bring into judgment all that comes. Marvelous material. I don't know that I do it justice, but the wisdom literature, and I just got got through a whole series on it, and that's why it's fresh on my mind. And I hope it helps yours. Thank you for listening. It's okay.
Thank you.